Welcome to Queen City Cyber Consulting's channel.
Welcome back to Queen City Cyber Consulting, where we talk about a variety of topics involving cybersecurity, involving the internet, and their effects on communities. And we would be wrong if we didn't talk some about AI and the backlash from the public. Now, a gentleman named Nate Silver did an interview with Jasmine Son, who went out to local communities and talked to the people who are being affected by these data centers because she wanted to get a ground up view of it. She wanted to know what was going on in the public's eye and mind. And that's important when we come to AI. AI is inescapable at this point. It's everywhere. You use it. You may not even realize it, but most of us are using AI in one way or another. Over the course of time, these data centers have become much more public, and the public has become much more aware of them, often because of really bad news headlines. And the effects that these things are having on the local environment. Even here in Maryland, just recently at the local Maryland conference, a portion of it was directed directly to data centers and what we should be doing as a state when it comes to data centers. Unfortunately, we are way behind the curve when it comes to this. I spoke at my local city council meeting, hopefully providing some insight, some tech savvy input into the process, because you have to remember, folks, these politicians don't have a lot of tech savvy. If you go back and look at the congressional hearings that were held a couple years ago, where they interviewed Mark Zuckerberg and the head of Google and others, those Congress people had no idea how tech works. They were asking ridiculous questions, and basically they ended up looking like fools. We, as the public, can't afford to do that when it comes to AI. We need to understand what it is, what effects it's having, and what we should do to respond to it. So I put together this little executive summary, which is a review of the article that I mentioned just a bit ago by Mr. Silver. And that's the kind of ground roots reporting really that needs to be done so we can figure out what the public angst is all about and not rely on the media, not rely on the government, but get a handle on what's going on with AI and with data centers, because they're here and they're not really going to go away. And I don't want us to fall into the scare tactics that I just saw over on YouTube, where I'm not even going to go into the details of the video. He was applying all kinds of apocryphatic language and coming up with these far-stretched ideas, warning us about demons and everything else. We have to take a common sense approach to this. Just like with the internet, when it first came out, a lot of it was not understood, it was misunderstood, but hey, it became a useful tool. AI is probably in that same category if we respond correctly and if we educate ourselves and learn what it is. So, Mr. Silver and Jasmine Son sat down and discussed this. Now, a part of the article is behind a paywall, so you can't see it. Many people won't be able to see it, which is a hindrance. It's only one of probably many that are out there. But they sit down and they discuss how these hyperscaled AI data centers have evolved from basically being invisible into major political flashpoints, even affecting elections out in the Midwest. Not so much here just yet, but probably on its way here, I would guess, because the topic comes up continually, even in local politics where I live, and we live in a very rural area. Does it matter? Yes, it does. They are no longer just abstract tech concepts, these data centers. They have been documented to adversely influence electrical grid stability, uh, end user power bills, taxation, local zoning, and the idea that the community no longer has voice in whether these things are going to come into being or not. Even in our own local community where I live, there are rumblings, and that's all they are at this point, rumblings that behind the door deals were made to have a data center put in a local community. Nothing in writing, nothing firm, but the rumors persist. And we can't create public policy based on rumors. It's just not good fiscal or any other kind of sense when it comes to creating policies. So, looking at the article from Mr. Silver, great ground level reporting. Uh, the lady reporter did a great job going directly into the field in Wisconsin and Michigan, capturing real community sentiment. She didn't rely on the assumptions out in the media, the politics, the tech companies themselves. She wanted to hear the voice of Main Street America, so to speak. The report itself does directly address these costs that are secret. And this is a sticking point with me, to be blunt. These non-disclosure agreements that are being signed by local officials and the data center owners should not be happening. There should not be some kind of secret agreement between these two factors. If you're a local or even an elected official of any sort, you don't serve a tech company. You serve the people who voted you into office in whatever region you may be in. That's who you serve. If you sign an NDA basically saying, I'm not going to talk about this to the public, you have broken your oath of office. Really hate to break it to you, but you have. And that's going to cause political backlash. And they've already seen it out in the Midwest. People have lost offices over this. So you better use a little bit of common sense and remember who put you in office. And it wasn't Facebook or Mega or Meta or Google or whoever is putting these data centers out there. It was the people. Don't lose the public trust. And there's a labor nuance as well. There's a sharp divide between building trade unions who are getting very nice, lucrative construction fees. And then once the construction is over, the jobs basically dry up because these data centers run with minimal staff, 10 to 15, maybe up to 20. That's it. So once construction's over, there's no job boom. It's not like you put a factory in and you hired hundreds or thousands of people. You hire 10 to 15 people, mostly security, just to make sure that the thing keeps running. And any technical savvy that you need comes in from outside. That's just how it works. Now, sad to say, the public entities, the politicians that are involved in this, are granting all these tax breaks and all this, and then turning around and saying, oh, it's going to benefit our community because taxes are going to increase. Well, not if you give them tax breaks for 10, 20, 30, 50 years. I can't tell you how many times that's happened in our local community where, say, Walmart came in, wanted to put in a store, and the local politicians falling all over themselves and fawning over the giant that is Walmart gave them tax breaks. They didn't pay taxes. They didn't have to because they were given tax breaks. I wish I could get a tax break every now and then, huh? And about 70% of the U.S. public is opposed to data centers in their local regions. It really is picking up a lot of steam, based some on reality, some on fabrication, and some on myth. There is a risk here. It's asymmetric. Silicon Valley, I don't even know if that really exists anymore, but it's a term that's come into play for the tech world. They reap the AI profits up front. it goes to them. That's just how it works. The local towns where these data centers suddenly sprout up, they are the ones that bear the burden of their electrical grid, their power grid, any environmental effects. Just today, I saw another headline where some data center pumped out polluted water into the local streams and just ruined those streams. These are things that have to be addressed by public officials, not under an NDA, but openly. And the public needs to educate themselves on exactly what these systems are and what they're being used for. There's a lot of friction. Bipartisan opposition is rising. I guess that these data center owners aren't able to muster their bargaining power and apply it politically to overcome the voice of the people. So you're seeing a lot of moratoriums in both red and blue states against data centers. Here in Maryland, there are several counties that have already enacted a multi-year moratorium until more studies can be done. There are improvements in the tech, to be honest. They are building them in such a way now that the environmental impact is lessened. That's not really getting out there, though. And the ultimate use of these data centers is still in question. What exactly do we need all of these data centers for? What's the purpose behind them? In the interview itself, in case you don't read it or watch it on your own, there are some weaknesses in it. They do delve more in depth into Claude versus Chat GPT, which really doesn't affect the end user very much. It does lack some hard grid data. It does rely heavily on casual impressions, but it's based on public interviews, so that's not really surprising. There needs to be some really good studies done, and I've seen that Ellen Brockovich is actually doing some work on this herself, and the studies are out there. The problem is that most people don't know that they're out there and don't refer to them when they're talking about this topic openly and publicly. So it's kind of an interesting topic. So our public priorities versus the tech hype for the public, affordable utility rates is up 92% because they're seeing the headlines that say when data centers come in, what happens is the public ends up paying for the power usage by the data center. Very true in many cases, very true, and a good worry to have, which must be dealt with by the politicians who are involved. Local zoning transparency is huge. Those NDAs, signing NDAs and keeping things secret. What are we, the U.S. government waging a war? Why can't the public know what's going on? Why should the government have these secret backdoor meetings without telling the public about it? I don't grasp that. And I know it happens at the city level, it happens at the county level, it happens at the state level. I get all that. The problem is that the city government isn't some top secret organization dealing with national security matters. It's dealing with your local community, and it should be entirely open to the public, except for things like personnel issues and things of that nature. It just should be. That's my personal opinion. Of course, practical daily tools. We use it, like I just said. If you're using it right now probably because a YouTube algorithm is pointing you to this video, etc., etc., on it goes. And then you have futuristic visions. I mentioned that earlier. We're not going to delve into that here. Uh, Internet users care more deeply about living costs and fair governance. That's what it comes down to. The Silicon Valley tech bros, their messaging focuses on these distant speculative promises. And nothing's really changed since the Industrial Revolution. There's a lot of disconnect here, even as there was back then. And we should learn some lessons from that. Uh, I did a video not long ago on a man named Thomas Chalmers, who was a minister in Scotland during the Industrial Revolution, and the effects that it had on the people in Scotland, especially in the inner cities. It's something that we need to address, and it needs to be addressed openly by the public. So what's its impact on everyday internet users? Well, updating the grid, the power grid, Maryland's power grid is in disarray, by the way, in case you didn't know that. They've closed down practically every power plant in the state in the hopes that greeny energy is going to take over and power everything, and it's a miserable failure. These upgrades and costs, though, are being passed down to the residential electricity ratepayers instead of the data centers paying for them. That's just wrong. There are increasing paywalls. Computing shortages may force tech providers to put top-tier AI models behind very expensive monthly subscription tiers. In other words, you're not going to be able to use Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever tool that you're trying to use right now unless you're willing to pay for it. And local democracy suffers. These secret corporate NDAs that erodes public trust. It limits public participation in community development. And if it's the community, the public should have a voice in it. And that's what it ultimately is going to come down to, I think. Some strategic recommendations for people who are watching and listening to this. For the tech and the developers of these systems, get rid of these NDAs. Just drop them. Don't come in and say, before we even talk, you need to sign an NDA. Instead, focus on those immediate benefits, medical advantages, local power grid investment by your company. Stop trying to build some sci-fi utopia because the people don't want to hear that can't pay their power bill or are struggling to make medical costs. And you're coming in with some sci-fi utopia that AI is going to provide. People aren't listening. People aren't listening. The day of the fairy tale is over. Sorry, just being blunt with you. For us, the community, the voters, we need to make sure that our city councils, our county commissioners, our state representatives have full transparency on what's happening. Before anything changes in zoning, before anything is approved, it needs to be discussed publicly. That's where it comes to fruition. Any binding commitments for energy expansion, etc., has to be on the data centers to fund. They have to fund their own infrastructure needs. It should not be on you and I and us paying higher electric cost or gas cost or whatever it is in order to get a data center in. That's not going to employ anybody anyway. What do we get out of it? Those are some steps. Those are some strategic recommendations that we very much need to have under our belt. Let's be clear. When it comes to cyber and policy intelligence, let's speak to it logically and rationally, not out of fear and misunderstanding. Learn about the topic, recognize your own use of it, and then implement a clear, common sense response to it, rather than a knee-jerk reaction built off of lies or faulty information. And you politicians that may happen to listen to this, you better take the blinders off. The citizens want to know what's happening. Don't be signing NDAs. Don't act in secrecy. You better be open and upfront, or citizenry will find out and you will be out of office. This is Queen City Cyber Consulting. Hope you learned a little something. Take care. Go forth and conquer.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.